Welcome back to another episode of Elevated Dialogue here on the Unkle Junior Network. I go by the name of Unkle Junior, and I am just one of the wolfpack members that will be here with you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the wolfpack, and here is the panel for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the man with the free chicken, the mindset coach himself, Mr. Dwayne Dwyer. The coolest grandpa on TikTok, Mr. Rolling Down Your Street.
I
The
love
man with the chalk in his hand, the other artist, Mr. Antoine Christopher, the guy with the code and the guy with the locks, Mr. Accountable Masculinity, Victor Viziant, and
it.
last but not least, the baby of the bunch and just an ordinary guy, Mr. Across the Table with Christopher McClellan. Gentlemen, how y'all doing tonight?
Doing all right.
I am well, coach. I took your advice yesterday, and let me tell you, I had a ball. Who last night was so fun.
I love it. You got to tell me all about it later.
He told you about sugars? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, later on. Hey man, I appreciate y'all being here tonight. I really do, man. I'm looking forward to the show. I've been looking forward to it all day. Actually, I was thinking about it at work today. I was like, man, I can't wait to get into the conversation, man. So appreciate y'all for taking time out of y'all busy schedule to be here tonight, and hear and be able to listen to what you guys have to offer and what you guys have to say. Thank you to everybody who is at home watching tonight. I appreciate you being here tonight as well. Thank you to the most elevated chat on YouTube. Appreciate you being here. Thank you to any military folk out there serving your country. Appreciate you and appreciate all that you do. At this time, I'm gonna take a quick second. Go around the horn. Anybody over here on this platform got anything that's going on? Take no more than 30 seconds and plug anything you got. I know Coach got something on Friday night. So Empowering Perspectives podcast. So Coach plug that, and then Vic plug what you got, and then anybody else that got anything going on, go ahead and plug it real quick before we get started.
Yeah, so real quick, Empowering Perspective podcast. Just go to YouTube and type in Empowering Perspectives. And on Friday nights, we have a special podcast called The Hearts of Men, where we talk about everything under the sun. A lot of the challenges that men go through, young boys, mothers raising boys without fathers, or even young men. And again, it's not just focused on them. Everybody's welcome, so it's really a platform from everybody. Then on Saturday mornings, we have another platform to where we talk reframing the image of relationships, and that is with my good friend Miss Anita Simpson. And then we also have another one called Dream Manifestation with my good friend Tanisha. And I'm working on one right now with a young man named Lester Young. And Lester Young's story is phenomenal. And we're going to probably launch that on one Friday and then make that a monthly conversation as well. So again, Empowering Perspectives on YouTube. Come on over and join the family.
All right, Coach, appreciate that information. I'm coming up on your platform soon, man. And part of the thing that I've been working on is I just dropped the link. It's my private business mindset coaching consultation. I just dropped the link in the chat, and that's one of the main things where I get the chance to connect with people, and for a small fee, I get to point them in the right direction to their next business objective, because a phone call could save you thousands of dollars, and point you in the right direction. Because a lot of times people have good ideas, and until you have your resources arranged, you don't know how to point it. So that I'm available for those coaching consults to help push you down the road. And there's some other incentives, such as a structured program to build your business. And also purchase the code. Hey, you see me flash the book at all times. It's going up here in a second, but here's a link directly to it, which is on my Shopify store, where you can also check other merchandise that I have available. Okay. What we got going on here?
Antoine, you got something you got?
No, I mean, I just want to tell everybody I'll be starting really focusing on getting my channel. I really start making videos again, drawing videos pertaining to art. So I'm really going to start doing it. I hear you all. If anybody's listening out there, I hear it. I'm just not good at it yet. But I will be starting soon again. That's it. And I look forward to when they go into you guys' page. I always listen though. When I'm drawing, Coach knows I'm there. Anytime you guys, Vic, I'm there. Every time you guys go on live, I'm there because I always say hi or something. So just want you to know, I watch you guys.
Roland?
Man, I'm working on some things. I got some things that's coming down the pike. But right now, I'm just loving life and encouraging people, whether it be on any platform, on TikTok, Poor Man's Dr. Phil, on Facebook and Instagram. I'm just encouraging people. Sometimes I'm fooling, but I'm just living and loving life. And I got things that's coming down the pipe so that I can have my own space and continue to do what I do on other platforms and other venues.
You got over there, Christopher? You muted.
Oh shoot, I'm chilling. I am chilling right now. What I got going on is just relearning and unlearning everything. Like this journey is crazy. Like this journey is real crazy. So I really don't have anything like popping right now. I'm thinking about getting my channel back up, but I have to get my mind right before I do it. So I am getting back into Chicago style stepping and ballroom dancing though. That's where I went. That's where I went last night, and whew. So you might be seeing me on YouTube getting a couple of like little competitions or whatever.
Wow,
but
I'm looking forward to that.
But they're not really like big competitions. They're just like little competitions that we have during the set. Like they pick two people out of the crowd and they dance, and then the crowd decides. It's not for a trophy or nothing. It's
cool.
Just to have fun. So you might see me doing that. But other than that, man, I'm chilling.
How'd you pick your partner?
Hold on, Antoine. Hold on. That's for after the show. Let me get to it, please. I'm about to go left. But no, hey man, I appreciate it, man. We definitely want to we all would probably definitely support you in everything that you're doing, man. I like that stuff. It looks interesting and it looks fun.
Oh, it is.
So, but anybody who's watching, every link, TikTok, all of our links or anything like that are going to be in the description, so you can feel free to check it out and hit any of us up. Follow us on our different platforms and different things like that. Again, thank you to the chat out there. Already said Antoine, Leah's already said that she's an artist and she would love to connect. So there you go, right there. So but let's get into it, fellas, man. Hold on, let me move this button around. All right, so today we're going to be talking about men's responsibility to their families. So, we talked a little bit before we got on the show, and family looks different to everybody, so whatever you deem to be your family, that's what we're talking about today. So being responsible for your family is more than just providing them financially. It's about being emotionally present, setting a good example, and being a positive influence on their lives. How do you balance these different aspects of responsibility, and what are some of the challenges you have faced trying to be a responsible man? So these are just some of the talking points that we're going to be getting into today. Again, if you're here, thank you. Feel free to hit the like button, the share button, and subscribe if you hadn't already. We're going to start off tonight with the first question. Just going to be is, what does it mean? What does it mean to be a responsible man? It's a lot of different definitions out there, but so we're going to start just going around the horn, around the platform, and see what everybody has to say on this topic. So who wants to start with this one?
I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
Being personally accountable for your actions, and like if you start with self and worry about what you can control versus what you can influence, and then understanding the difference between authority and control, then you'll have a better experience in life, when it comes down to it.
I was going to say the
Antoine?
same thing. I was going to say the same thing. Just to me, being a responsible man is in the definition. Like you do what you're supposed to do as a man at a root level. and you don't stray from that. You understand what I'm saying? But again, I'm learning new things about what it is to be a man and what it is to be responsible. But at base level, that's what I got from the journey that I've been on. The rest, I defer to y'all.
I think the main thing I could say from my own experience is being responsible, being a provider, and handling your business first. Make sure everything is secure in the household you live in.
What do you mean by that? Like, go a little bit deeper when you say.
Meaning the bills are paid, the lights on, there's food in the fridge, everything that makes you sustain the lifestyle that you have, and at the same time thriving towards your goals. I think you should have a goal. I don't think that you should be stagnant. I don't think you should be comfortable. I don't think you should stop wanting, because the minute you stop wanting, the economy is still going to go up, bills are still going to get higher. So you have to move with the times. Gone are the days when one salary and one paycheck did it, right? Or if you do make one paycheck, it will have to be a good one. So I think that you should always be thriving. You should always be moving with the economy. You should always never live higher than your means. I think you should work to where you want to live. So I think that's what I say.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think to just add on to what these brothers just said, the man, not only is he responsible for everything within the confines of his family, but he has to set the example, because I can't ask my spouse, my children to hold certain values and live up to certain things. Like in the household, I can say, well, your name is this, so this is how Walkers move. But I have extended family that, like you brothers, I got to be able to count on you and hold you to certain standards, as well as be responsible and respectful enough to hold myself accountable so that I'm not falling short within this family structure.
So I really like those responses, by the way. I think I'm gonna go prior to it. I think in order for me to understand what the responsibilities of a man and or family man, I need to have a clear identity of what a man is all about, right? So I need to clearly define what manhood looks like, and I generally get that definition from my father. If my father is available, if my father is not available, then there's going to be some other responsible man, hopefully within my family, that helps me get a clear identity of what manhood is. And then I should get to the point to where I should learn the parameters that surround being a man first before I can get to the point of being a family man. Again, I should have a working knowledge of family man, and that should come from my father as well. Um, but that also gives me a starting point. And then that starting point allows me to exercise experience and learn from the experience whatsoever. And then from that, I get to the point to where I understand what family vision looks like. And then, as long as I have an established family vision, then that helps me to set priorities within the scope of it. So that means now that I've set priorities within the scope of, the family based upon me being the man or a man in that family, that means that certain things don't supersede those priorities. That being said, sure, the guys may want to go out to the club or whatever the case may be, but I have some priorities that may supersede that. So being man enough to tell them, say, hey, I'm not going to be able to do it. That falls without the scope of what it is I choose to do with my life, or I just can't do that right now. I appreciate you guys inviting me, but I'm just not going to go. Once you mature, you move into the space where the people that you surround yourself with, they don't do those things. They don't necessarily do those things. So we may spend some man time together. We may be watching a football game, whatever that looks like. But that also means that at a certain point in time, I'm going back home to my family so that I can exercise the authenticity of what that space looked like. So again, I think we have to go back to the beginning and have a clear identity of what manhood looks like first before I start talking about being a family man. I think one of the issues that you'll find is that you have people who don't understand what manhood looks like trying to become a family man, and they mess up the family because they don't understand manhood.
Well, let's do that then. you guys okay with taking a step backwards and kind of defining what manhood is from different perspectives? I think, you know, we're all old enough to have our own definitions and have our own experiences with our fathers. We at the same time are giving a message to the viewer. So if you guys are okay with it, would you guys want to take a step back and kind of, you know, put down some boundaries of what's considered what a man is? Y'all think that's appropriate? Yeah.
Yeah.
I prefer to start with you, Coach, based off of just because you started it. So it seemed like you'd be a good person to lead off with this. So if you don't mind.
You are far too kind. So yeah, I don't mind starting it off at all. Again, if I look at my father, and I don't want to get all scriptural and all that stuff on everybody, but when I look at my father, I understand what he does. I understand how he does. I understand how he moves. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine earlier this week, and I know a family, and the entire family works in real estate. The husband is the mortgage broker, the wife is the realtor, and the son, he does the homeowners inspections. So in essence, the son is growing up under the understanding of what the family actually does. Now, knowing him, the father himself, that's the plan that he put together before he retired out of the army. And so I use that only as an example because when a young man, whether he's teenager or whatever that looks like, when he looks at his father becomes that working model of what manhood looks like. How does a man carry himself? How does a man behave? How does a man control himself emotionally? So, with that being said, he should be that person within the house that understands, number one, what the vision looks like. He should be the person in the house that creates a stable environment. He is the one that quiets the storm when discrepancies come out or when issues come out or whatever the case may be. So, just looking at authentic manhood, understanding that there is a huge responsibility that goes way beyond provide and protect. Do not accept the worldly or the societal norm when it comes down to what definition of manhood is about. We do more than just pay bills, and we do more than just set the alarm before we go to bed at night or make sure that the alarm is on the house or have guns in the house. We do more than those things, right? Men teach, men coach, men mentor, we instruct, we provide, we protect. We actually go to football and basketball games. We actually go and sit down and we actually talk to teachers when it comes down to what's going on with their children. Men should be intimately involved with their children's development. They should want to do those things that were actually modeled for them or were not modeled for them. And if it wasn't modeled for you, then you have a responsibility to learn. Sure, you have a steeper hill to climb. That does not mean that hill is not worth it. Because just because a person did not, and that person may be your father, or your stepfather, even for that matter, just because that person did not necessarily view you as the value person that you are, that does not mean that you owe that same level of disrespect to your children. So, with that being said, be that man that you always needed to be in your house. So, with that being said, man, manhood it's so much more than what we can. I mean, really, we can spend the next hour talking about what authentic manhood is. But again, strip yourself of the societal norms and go above and beyond for everybody else in your family.
Anybody want to add to that?
I'll jump on that because this is something that's near and dear to me, and I'm going to take it to the scripture because it's a reference point, and you can use whatever reference point to get to the same ending, and the ending is showing yourself a man. Because in the scripture, when David was about to die, King David was about to die, he told his son, and I'm going to paraphrase, he said, I'm about to go the way of the Father, saying, I'm about to die. But you stay strong and you show yourself a man. And in showing yourself a man, he says, paraphrasing still, follow after God, keep his laws, statutes, and commandments. What he's saying is, I've lived this life in front of you. Now you follow suit and do the same and make sure you train your children. And when you, as a man, as a man, I think I had some bad role models, a lot of bad role models, and then I had a couple good role models as to what a man was. And so I grew up thinking that men lived and did certain things. And so I was pretty much a grown boy when I became an adult. And I still wanted to play games. I still wanted to manipulate. I still wanted to do all those things. But as a man, the manipulation tactics got to go away. The what we have to do is what Antoine was talking about. Antoine was talking about I have to be the provider. I have to be the protector. And Dwayne spoke on it. Like me, I know before I go to bed, I lock all the doors. I'm checking everything, locking all my doors, making sure all the cars are, everything, because the security for the house ain't the system. Security house under the Most High is me. So I got to make sure everything is done. So I'm doing my part. And I think when we have men that grow up to know that the responsibility is not just like, because I had a bunch of daughters, so I was at the football game, but I'm over there doing cheers, making sure they know I'm here with you. It's not just about whether or not it's a boy. Oh, you raise the boys, you raise the girls, I raise the boys, because girls need us too. So I think as a man, we have to be ever learning, ever growing, and ever seeking to see where we may be lacking in our responsibilities so that we can hold ourselves accountable.
It's a lot to being a man.
Definitely.
Bro. It ain't, you know, Coach said it, and like Coach said, we could sit over here and we could talk about this for hours. You know, it's not just one thing. You know, what Coach said and what Roland said is just some of it. You know, it's like you said, teaching and mentor. It's little things, you know, going to games, just being present. It's so much that goes into just what it means to just be a man. And it's so much that you have to learn. You know what I mean? Like Vic, I remember him saying stuff about, you know, being able to read the room. Like, you know, when we talk about protection, like that comes in so many different forms. It just doesn't come in the form of at house at nighttime and locking the doors. It comes in the form of being out in public, making proper decisions in the family. So whereas we're not in financial strain, to whereas we're not getting evicted, you know what I mean? All of those things are protection. All of those things come with making choices and decisions that lead to better protection for our families. Protection is not just physical protection. It comes in so many different forms, you know, and it's, you know, like I said, there's so much that goes into being a man that, you know, it was, you know, maybe it was disingenuous to try to, you know, start with going backwards and trying to define it just because it's so much, you know, it's simple, but it's so much at the same time. You know, it's not like you can just go pick up a, you know, a pamphlet and it tell you exactly how to be a man. You know, it's a lot. And a lot of it comes with experience, you know, and seeing other people, and watching Coach and watching Roland and look how they act, and, you know, seeing how they may want to articulate their conversation versus how they don't want to have, versus how they don't want to communicate with people. So it's a lot, man. And the good thing about it is that you get to continue to grow and you get to continue to learn, and then you get to look back and you get to see some of your growth, and you see, you know what, and then you get to look back and be like, you know what, I was really like a little boy back then. Like I thought when I was 21, like you couldn't tell me nothing. I thought I was grown. You know, 27, 20, I thought I was grown. Bro, I'm 47 now. Them dudes back at 27, them little dudes ain't know nothing. The 27-year-old me, bro, that dude was trash. He was trash.
It's a trial by fire, man. That's really what it is. Like, you know, wisdom doesn't come without some scuff marks, you know. Like it's certain things that we got a chance to have access to in the sideline by, you know, that we say, hey, a lot of people's crash dummies. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we don't have to do it that way to find out that it doesn't work, you know. And I think that the mark of a man is his ability to teach, because we don't have rivals. We don't have like, you know, like a ceremony. You know what I'm saying? We just do, you know. And I think when you become a man is when you just decide to take charge of a situation and you refuse to fail at somebody else's lack of merit. You have a certain level of personal accountability that's rooted in winning and a positive outcome and improving on efficiency. And so, like, you have to develop some sort of code for yourself. You know what I'm saying? So like you gotta have something to structure and ground you, whatever it is, and it's got to be something that you understand. If don't nobody else understand it, you have to be able to understand it. Because I think the other thing too about being a man that I think marks his arrival is he useful? Nobody calls useless people. Like if you're a man and you're not useful, then what are you? So I think a man has to be of service. I think a man has to put himself, in the most objective position possible, because the goal is to keep adjusting to life, keep adapting, keep being flexible, and you're gonna get more people that come to you with questions than answers. You're gonna have to be able to sort out who causes problems, who brings solutions and opportunities. You have to be able to read the room. All of this is packaged into like when you mix your feelings, your untrained feelings, with true real world experience, then you have a manifestation of emotional intelligence that allows you to read the room and not overreact. And you should have a feeling of stoicism, and people should feel it coming off of you. You could tell by their responses to you. Because if you're paying attention to what other people see, then your actions will speak differently. Because if actions speak louder than words, then what are you doing?
I could only go by, I was fortunate enough, right? So I had a father and mother in the house. Like my father was in the house, right? So I can tell you from my experience, I will mimic everything off my dad, because my dad was always on guard as a man. Always. We get judged so much for what we wear, what we do, where we're coming from, how we speak, everything. Men are always on guard, right? So feeding off my father, there's some things I would do differently from him. I wish he was a little bit more sensitive instead of sending me over to my mother all the time, stuff like that, because she took care of that part. I wish he was more attentive when he was teaching me something, more patient. He'd want me to learn it like this so we can move on to the next thing. But other than that, the providing, the taking care of, the making sure the roof, the lights, the Christmas presents, man, I hope to do just as good as job as him. So I have that example. Being a man is always being on guard. Yes, the main thing men do is provide. That's what you're there for. You bring life into this world and you take care of it. If you don't bring life into this world, you take care of what you have. You have to, because that's the way we were built. That's our genetics. That's how we see things, right? We don't dress up to go out and say, oh, I want to wear this pretty little outfit we don't do that. We look good, we look sharp, and we go hunting. It's the way it is. So we're always on guard. And I remember asking my dad, I said, Dad, why are you always on guard? He goes, when do you sleep? He goes, that's when I'm not on guard, is when I sleep. As men, we always have something going on. And people don't understand that, but it's true. So I would say definitely as a provider, that's the number one thing we do. We provide, we take care of, all right? I'm not saying keep up with the Joneses, but we take care of business. We handle business. We handle people in our lives. We take care of people in our lives. We make sure we don't go without. And when it comes to the emotional stuff, we're there for that too. We have to dedicate some time for that too. We have to balance our feelings, know when to take it off, turn it off, know when to turn it on. So as a man, that's your job, doing everything, right? Because we always stress about wanting to lead and all this sort of, and we do lead, but that comes with a hell of a lot of responsibility and accountability, right? And one thing men can't do, because we always is lie. It always comes back to us like, God damn. It's like you say one thing on one hand, for some reason as men being accountable, it always comes full circle. So we always have to be on guard. So I would say it like that.
I like that, Antoine. I appreciate everything that everybody's been saying. Shout out to the chat. I'm going to jump on something that I saw in the chat real quick, because it's something that we talk about, Coach talks about, and that's leadership. So thank you, Adrian, for this comment right here. Apart from the points mentioned, leadership is also a crucial component, especially when you have a family. How do y'all feel leadership plays a part into men's responsibilities to their families?
That's the difference between households. Leadership, like most men have capacity to, to take care of most things. We assume that if a man is there, he should be useful, he should be capable, and the capacity to do is only as effective as that person's resources. And we're talking about intangible resources, not just money, like the understanding of what his role is in the situation, how to stay consistent on whatever his principles are that are in line with the overall direction and purpose of the household. For instance, Coach and Roland, they lead with with a divine understanding, what I'm saying, of the Most High. So those principles that they lead the house under stem from their guidance from where, they go seek greater understanding. I think you have to submit to greater information, and most leaders are able to do that. And then the inability to do that is also the condition of the household too. So if you got a constant flux, state of chaos, it's because somebody that's, in the leadership capacity is probably unable to take in new information, probably has an inability to delegate properly, and understand that is probably struggling with the difference between control and authority. You should want authority, but you don't want control. You know what I'm saying? Those two different things. One requires a little bit more management, where you have a lot of your intellectual resources tied up, and the other one just says I'm in position to step in if I need to, but I have sowed and create an atmosphere of trust where I lead people to their own devices to solve a problem until it becomes a hindrance, on the entire household. So I think that the ability to coach, objectively from the sideline, and then keep people in bounds and don't let them get out of bounds. That's very vital.
Based off of the conversations that I've had with married men and single fathers, being a man requires you to think a lot, because you, like Antoine said, you have to be on guard, you have to be the provider, you have to do those things. But that changes on a day-to-day basis, especially if you're in the house with the same person. So we have to think a lot, and we have to understand, well, based off of what they're saying, because I've never been married and I don't have any children, so I don't know what, I'm saying, my responsibility to the family would be in a leadership position. But from the men that I've conversed with, they say that they always have to be on their toes. So I guess in a sense, I agree with Antoine. You have to be on your guard, and being on your guard means you got to think a lot too. Situations change and you got to be quick about it. And you have to understand that thinking about that is about everybody. It ain't about just you.
You know what I want to say about leadership? Leadership, okay, for me, and I think leadership across the board should be this. Leadership is not ego. It's not leadership with your ego. Leadership is not ego. Leadership is guidance. Being willing to take information, process it, and use it the right way for the outcome. That's what leadership is. This whole talk about leadership and submissiveness, that's not what leadership is. Leadership is putting your ego aside, being able to process it the best possible way, and then making the best decision based on the family, whether you have kids or you have a wife or you don't have kids. That's leadership, right? You have a general on top. He has everybody beneath him. Those are the ones doing the work. The only thing the general does is process the best way to distribute the work. That's leadership. He doesn't, hey, this is how I want you guys to do it. No, he sits at the table and goes, what do you have to say about it? And he goes around, everybody hears their all opinion. Then he takes the leadership, process it, and then says, this is how I think we should move. Gentlemen, take on the roles that you were given and process it. When you have something wrong, come back and knock on my door. But most people today take this leadership role and they lead with their ego, and nothing gets done but back and forth. And that's not what leadership is. That's all I want to say on that.
And as a leader, anybody that's a leader that doesn't have someone over them, someone or something, you got to have checks and balances. And anyone who won't submit to someone or something higher than them shouldn't expect someone under them to submit to them, because then it becomes a monarchy. It becomes, I'm in charge and I'm the boss and I wear the pants and I'm this. And I like how you said he took the advice of the other leaders and what they had to say. And yeah, the decision comes down to the head, period. But it's not a stern iron fist thing.
Right.
It's where you gotta, and that's why you gotta. I think Tawami said something about evolving. You gotta ever be evolving because the things that I face as a parent, my parents didn't face. Like in school, you can't just talk about the birds and the bees with your kid, and you talking about well, the boy gonna do this because you got to tell your son well, the boys might be trying to holler at you too. And I'm not trying to be cute or funny, but that's just the reality that we live in these days. You got to talk, even have the sex talk in a different way than was probably and most likely not given to us at an early age.
Yeah, man. I want to switch a little bit. We'll stay on responsibility. Oh, go ahead, coach. Go ahead, coach. Please go.
I love the leadership conversation. One of the things I know, not just from being a leader in the Army and teaching leadership and teaching lieutenants, captains, and warrant officers leadership for the Army after retirement, is that every leader has a code of ethics that he or she must follow. I think that's the beginning piece. That's why I always start off with you cannot just mitigate your existence to just doing. Whenever a man allows people to mitigate his existence to just doing, you are being robbed of the potential of your leadership ability because they will only see you through the lens of what you can do. So, with that being said, every man has a code of ethics that he must follow. That code of ethics will lead him down the path of doing what he does honorably, having a set of values that lead him to the direction to where he not only has a stewardship for who he is, but have a stewardship for what he represents. So when you look at it from the larger perspective, I like what Roland said. He has to submit to something. He will submit to the core perspective of where those ethics and values come from. Therefore, as leaders, what we have to understand, especially as men, it's not about what you do. It's not about who you instruct. It's not about disseminating orders. It's not about any of those things. That's part of it, but that's a very small part of it. It's really about who you empower. Leaders within the household empower the people within their house to be the best versions of themselves. So whether it's providing resources, whether it's providing guidance, whether it's providing uplifting conversation to edify or instruct, which is in essence the same thing, right? So all of those things take on the full spectrum of what leadership within the household looks like. Again, I got to stress that piece because again, we cannot allow it to just be minimized to just what you do. Your existence is a large portion of what you are and who you are. I can't stress that enough. Like you can't it has to be something in you. It's not just about motivating. It's not about motivation. It's the inspiration to be better, the inspiration to make others better. Like case in point, like you as a man should actually elevate your son to be the best version, the better version of you. Like sure, give your son the space to you know move into what he is called to do, but you elevate your son above you and you give your son all of the resources, which include every bit of knowledge that you got, so that your son can be the walking manifestation of all the lessons that you learn.
Man, I like it. Y'all on it tonight. I appreciate it.
Clip that. Clip it.
Hey, coach, you just talked about, who you are and what you are, who you are and what you are. How does that play? Because I'm thinking about that as a man, we have to constantly work on ourselves. As a family man, there are other people in the family who are going to require some of our time and some of our attention. So how does it work when we're trying to balance growing, working, working first maybe, then trying to grow yourself and build and learn and get more information like Antoine was saying earlier, continuing to grow. Well, how do you do all of that when you work in the 9 to 5, you're trying to build yourself, You got a child pulling over here. Your wife need her time. There are family obligations. There are all of these different things that's pulling on you at the same time. So how do we balance all of these different responsibilities that we have to our family, still make time for ourselves, make sure that we spend time with our kids, grandkids in some of our cases, so because as we get older and the more people we know, we sometimes have responsibilities to other family members outside of our immediate family. You know what I mean? Sometimes coach may call me. He may call me 2 o'clock in the morning, coach my family. So I am obligated to him as my brother, as my wolf pack, to answer the phone and see what he needs, because that's out of the ordinary for him. So not only is my, immediate family, but I have an extended family who may require some of my time as well. So how do we balance all of these different things as men, especially when it comes to being a healthy role model and being a leader inside of our own families?
I think that's a great question. First and foremost, if I call you at 2 o'clock in the morning, it is definitely a need. Um, but this is kind of
That's
goes back.
why I'm gonna pick up, because I already know it's
Yeah.
out of the ordinary.
Absolutely. This kind of goes back to where I started from, right? Identity. I think a lot of the confusion that exists in that space is that a lot of men don't know who they are. So when people claim they need you, you feel obligated to fulfill a need. Why? Because in your mind, what you do is provide and protect. So if this person needs me, I need to go over here and provide. This person needs me, I need to go over here and provide. This person needs me, I need to go over here and provide. No, that's not how it works. Again, as a man, especially as a married man, I'm gonna use you married men on this platform as an example. You have a family vision. Under that family vision, there are a certain set of priorities that you and your wife agreed that these things will guide the decision for the household. Now, within the scope of that vision, does it include some family members? Absolutely. Like mom and father. Like those are the primary family members outside of your immediate family. So if there's a need there, then sure, we will actually, consider them and actually go to their aid or whatever the case may be. But I mean, distant cousin that just called, I ain't talked to him about 15 years, and they just all of a sudden call and say, hey, I need. Well, that's not necessarily a need for me. It's not that I don't love my cousin, but in my family, we look at our priorities first, and then we go down that line. So, based upon the question that you asked, and I think it's a great question, I think we must first, under the vision, identify the priorities and allow the priorities to be the primary decision maker when it comes down to it. When you start looking at time, I got to work. I got to be there for my kids. I got to be there for my wife. I got to be there for time to grow. That's a full time schedule. You see what I'm saying? So within the scope of that full time schedule, will I have some free time? Sure, not a whole lot. So when it comes down there, I may need some mental health time as well. That's something that you got to keep in mind. If you're not mentally healthy, then you're no good for your priorities, let alone anybody else who claim they need you that, just happen to show up that you ain't talked to in 15 years. So I think when we go back, men must establish priorities. And the men who establish priorities, they establish priorities based upon their understanding of their identity.
I love where you went with that, because I think sometimes we take people for granted, and what we'll do is, and hope none of this happens to anybody on here, but mama may die at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's no reason to call me, and I'm not being crass or anything, but there's no reason to call me, because she gonna be dead at 7 o'clock in the morning. And why disturb my peace? And I'm not being funny, but you want me to get up. Now, if it's to counsel, if it's to something of that, but just to notify me, just to tell me something that could be handled, because I'm not handling anything. In my mind, when I get information comes, I handle it. So now I got to get in motion and start doing things. Now, there is no planning going on at 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, if somebody's talking about that, I've had people call me where somebody had a pistol and things were going like that, or there was need or a necessity to help people off a roof, off a ledge. That's different than you're in pain and you're hurting. Being in pain and being hurting can wait till the morning. So we have to take we got to be a respecter of other people's time also, because we can't just do things just because it feels like, oh, I got to call it, I got to notify the world. No, you don't. You got to sit down and think. You got to sit down and you got to feel whatever you're feeling. You got to feel it. And sometimes that's what we don't know how to do. We don't know how to take what we're feeling and let it hit us to the point that it hits us and we can actually deal with it.
I'm gonna say it like this. Like you mentioned, Garfield, something very good, right? You mentioned if a man is working on himself, don't get involved. Get your ass into counseling, work on yourself. Don't confuse it with everyday life. You know, don't make it. It's called life for a reason. It's called bills for a reason. That ain't going nowhere. No matter how healthy you think you are or how much you build your personality up and all that crap, then you ain't a man, and get help for it. And if it's taking a long time to get around, seek professional help, because you shouldn't be wasting your time in your 30s and your 40s when you should be actually preparing for the future, retirement, building yourself, right? So I'm going to come from a healthy perspective. I don't need to build on myself. I'm already stuck in my ways. I'm already on my purpose. I'm a happy guy. I do not wake up. I know what I'm going to do when I wake up. I know what I'm going to do at night. I know what time I'm going to do it. All that's good. You know what I work on? My time management. And one thing I'm selfish. If I can help you, I'm going to help you. But in any way, shape, or form, if that's going to put me in dire strait, I'm not helping you. And I have no problem telling you. Because if I tell you I can't help you and you decide to run, then you weren't my friend in the first place. Now, I have priorities in my life. The only people that can reach me direct, mom, dad, and my 2 brothers. I will drop whatever I'm doing 100%. Should a woman come into my life? That's number 4, 5, right? So you have to get your priorities straight and don't divert. Like they say in an airplane, if it's going down, put your mask on first before you help somebody else. All right? And if you have to really look inside and discover and do all this, I'm going to build it. Brother, stay away from the women. Stay away from outside disturbances. Put yourself in the corner and fix it. Heal yourself. Do what you need to do to make you the best version of yourself before you go out there and tackle the world like a man. All right? And if you want that job, do whatever it takes, research to get that job. That's what people need to understand. Don't come up to me and tell me as a 46-year-old man or a 30-year-old young adult, I'm working on myself. What are you working on? I need to give me some specifics, like what would you be working on? Mental health? Then go see a professional. You can't afford a professional? Find it. Find somebody that can help you get to that professional. But over here, if you are a grounded man, you're 46, 47, you should know your habits solidly. Do things change? Absolutely. Does life throw you a curveball? Absolutely. But the only way you should be calling me is if you benefit me, because I am very selfish with my time because I only have so much of it. So I prioritize. My Wednesdays is this show. Okay. Boom. Wednesdays is this show. If somebody calls me now, I'm not picking up the phone. If I see a 911 on my phone from a friend, I'm not picking up my phone. If it's from my mom, guys, later, click. I go do my business because I prioritize. And I think men need to do that. You need to be selfish. You really need to be. You cannot help everybody. I mean, that's more clear than that you're not going to get. And that's what I stress to everybody I mentor. You know, if you need me, call me. If you're thinking about it, next. That's how I think.
Where can they book you for mentorship, Antoine?
They just contact me through my website, or they tell me what they need, send me an email, or, talk to me, DM me or something. And they say, hey, listen, this is how I'm thinking. What do you think? I had a kid talk to me about a girl at 16. I'm like, dude, you're 16. It's puppy love. Knock it off. Really. Like, knock it off. I know you're going to hurt, cry the puppy dog tears, but you really think you're going to marry this girl? You're 16. It's going to be hotter, fresher, and younger coming along. He woke up like that. He goes, I didn't think about that. I go, bro, you're not going to marry her. What do you care? She's supposed to hurt you. So it builds strength. It builds manhood. And just think about this. You had her at 16. You got her fresher than fresh. Move on. And he understood what I was saying. He put 2 and 2 together. He's like, you're right. So how do I get over the feelings? Do the things you love outside of that. That's why I tell everybody, no woman, no nothing, no man, no is going to come before my art. It will be there before me. It was there before you, and it'll be there after you. I'm as good as the first drawing I make and I'm remembered by my last. That's one thing in life you have to understand. You're as good as the first thing you do, but you're remembered by your last. And if you want your last to be good, go out with a bang, man. That's what I'm saying.
What? My guy, Antoine.
I'm just saying.
Please clip that. Please
No.
clip that.
I Antoine dropped some jewels in there.
They definitely
I heard a lot of good stuff in there. You know, and one of the main things that I heard was what Coach was talking about, and that was the priorities. You have to prioritize your time. You know what I mean? There's only 24 hours in the day, and when you have a family, like I mentioned before, everybody's going to want some of your time. You know, sometime, you know, Antoine, what I was referring to when talk about building and growing, I agree with you. Like if you're still growing and building and working on yourself, there comes to be a certain point to where you shouldn't be dating yet. However, I believe that we should be in a constant state of growth and development, just overall as a man, just to be a better man. I don't think that's just my opinion. I also think, even like what you said, if you have to work on your time management, you may have to go to YouTube University or watch some shows or watch some podcasts on how to be more effective with time management. So there's still time that we may have to take away from the family to develop ourselves or to enhance our skills. You may decide, you know, I know you the best artist since, you know, whoever drew whatever, but you know, I mean, so there may be a time where, you know, you have to sit down with your mentor and work on a certain stroke, no pun intended, or anything like that, just to get better at a certain thing that you may do for your art. So that's kind of what I was looking at, is time that we have to spend to grow and develop ourselves. Whatever that looks like for each man is different. For you, it may be art, mentorship. For me, it may be sitting on the couch talking to somebody about my PTSD from the military. You know what I mean? But that's still stuff that we have to do aside from the family. Any more on balancing time?
Everybody nail priorities, right?
Hit them priorities. Priorities was on it.
Man, look, delegation. That's it. That's the only word I got. Delegate your issues.
Well, I want to say something then. I got another question. I always, you know, we hit on it sometimes when we're in conversation, but I don't know if we ever dig real deep into it. And I guess I kind of talked about when I started talking about coaching my extended family. You know, so what about our responsibilities to our community? There are some people who think that, you know, um, that means picketing or protesting. For other people, it means mentorship and giving back our time. It looks different for everybody else. So where do you guys stand on our responsibility as men when it comes to giving back to our community?
This may be a controversial take, but in order for us to have a responsibility to give back to the community, we have to have one in the first place. And we really don't. As far as like a black community, if you're speaking as for melanated people, we really don't have a black community. We just got a bunch of black folks that live next to each other.
Well, I'm speaking from communities, whatever you decide your community is. For some people, that means black folks. For some people, that means their inner circle and outer circle.
Okay.
So just
Okay,
kind of
so
sort
you're
of whatever your
differentiating.
definition is for your community. Yeah.
Okay, because my definition of community would be my crew that I have around me, like my network. It wouldn't necessarily be anybody outside of that. And I kind of feel like my responsibility to the crew is make sure that I'm representing the crew the best way possible. You understand what I'm saying? And standing on what I'm supposed to stand on so I can have a good reflection of myself. And if I have a good reflection of myself, it reflects on the crew.
See, I was speaking to my daughter, one of my daughters earlier, and we were talking about practicing group economics. And group economics has to be, because we don't have the community that we were just talking about. We don't have one where everybody knows their neighbors and we look out for each other and so forth and so on. But we have family and we have circles that we can take care of one another, but we have to also have the same mindset. And when we get the same mindset, to me, practicing group economics is one of those things that will allow us to establish our communities and build one another, and then branch off into expanding our communities with other people and other tribes, or per se, as Code Talk just spoke of, because that's one of the things that holds us back. We spend our money with everyone else. We take our money outside of our communities and spend it doing every and anything, and then we got our hands out like, what about me? Well, if what about me turns about everybody look like what about us, and we take care of us, then we would establish true community.
See, I agree. But I think, again, just like everything else, it's our understanding of what community really is. I think one of the best things that I can do kind of goes back, and I think this is all a linear equation, right? One of the best things that I can do is make sure that my children is value added to the community, which means that it's a requirement for me to instill in them the very best versions of me, so that when they go out in the community, they are pillars of the community. They're actually, they're actually functioning and working. And when people see them, they talk about how well mannered they are and things of that nature. Fast forward, not only do my kids add value to the community, I go out into the community, make myself known. I help, I teach, I coach, I mentor all the young men in my community, having positive conversations, helping them, especially those young men that don't have fathers of their own, helping those young men understand that, hey, we got it. Your dad is not a part of your life, but all you got to do, anytime you need advice, by all means, come by the house. We can sit down and we can talk. Me, you, and my kids together. Um, so when it comes down to our community, I agree 100%, but I also believe this the definition of community. And once we understand what that definition is, then what is the thing that galvanizes us together, so that we can realize that the community is really an extension of our family. And the community not only is an extension, but it protects our family, and vice versa as well. See, that's the thing, I think we miss when it comes to community. I don't know how it was when you guys were being raised, but I remember, being a young kid, and many nights we went to sleep and we didn't lock our doors, right? Because it was no fear of needing to lock your doors. We didn't fear the people in the community, because there was group love per se. Right, we cared about each other. If something was wrong, we were on the phone calling the people next door, calling the people down the street, whatever the case may be. Hey, it looked like somebody's lingering outside of your house, so we looked out for one another. So when we get to the point that we have a shared understanding, then we can get to what is called social responsibility. That social responsibility, in essence, is the love for the community. And ideally, what we also need to realize is that, depending upon where some of us live, everybody in the community doesn't look like me. So do I isolate myself from the people in my community that don't look like me? Do they isolate themselves from me? Or do we realize that we're all just a different shade of the same color, and actually extend our hands to help one another?
So I'm going to say, as far as community, I don't have one, right? I don't know what, because none of you guys made a definition clear of what a community is. Some said this, some said that, group of people, whatever. For me, a community is just helping people, helping your inner circle, outer circle, people that approach you, people that want mentoring from you, kids that want to ask you something. So I would say my community is broad, but I don't have a narrow. I wasn't raised with a narrow, this is your circle. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I can't relate to that when people say community. I actually find it quite funny, because I'm like, dude, community of what? Like, do you know all of them? Like, is it a village? Is it like a group of people? Because nobody has a definite, unless you're sectioning off like Asian community, Black community. Okay, you're talking about within that bubble. But as far as my community, I don't have one. I don't believe in it anyways.
Oh, there's that button. I was tuned in, man. I was really interested in all the different conversation that was being had up here. That's crazy, man. What about when it comes to relationships with families? We talked about responsibility, and we talked about time and stuff like this. So what relationships do you value over others, and do you value some of those relationships in the family based off of their position, or is it more so based off of their behavior?
Behavior. Like, I mean, community to me, like this kind of ties into it. You don't live in the same community as all your relatives, you know, and that's the difference between relatives and family and tribe, extended family, you know, whatever you mix that is, it's the components of a community. So you pick and choose, you know, where you are, you know, you go where you're celebrated versus where you tolerate it. You go where you're invited, you know what I'm saying, versus indicted. You go, where the energy is reciprocal. You know, you go where people appreciate your contribution. You go where you're useful. You know what I'm saying? So I think that if you're a progressive person, if you're moving in a direction where, you know, it's about your community, you spend more time interacting with the people that interact with you back, sharing like-minded conversations. And even if you don't agree on every single thing, you realize that there's a boundary to understanding, you know, that's either rooted in emotions or logic. And everybody's got different triggers, but the goal is to be around people that don't put you in a defensive posture, because we all have triggers. So I think community is established by who does not put you in positions for you to have to defend yourself for no reason.
Yeah, I like that. We're gonna I want to switch real quick, um, because sometimes you know I mentioned it before that you know there's a lot that goes into just being a man. We all have shared a lot of different things that it takes just to be a man, not to mention being a responsible family man. You know, so with that being said, you know there are a lot of challenges that come along with that too. You know what I mean? Sometimes you know you may be in a leadership position, you know, even in your own home, and people may not want to follow, or you may struggle in your leadership. You know, there may be some other different things that you know that you may struggle with just with being a responsible man. So you know, have you guys faced any challenges when it comes to being um a responsible man, just
All
in
men
general?
have. All men have. I think it's the adversity of the environment. If it was easy, you know, then everybody would have the same opinions on most things. And I think that the difference that determines a person being responsible or not is just choices. That's the difference between all of us. Some of us make a choice not to submit, and some of us make a choice not to lead, not to speak up, not to, you know what I'm saying? They don't, some people don't have any boundaries, but they're still a man, but that makes them dangerous if they don't have any boundaries. If you don't have any responsibility of your emotions, if you don't have your subconscious in check, if you don't realize the power of your words, if you don't understand your influence, if you don't understand how to read the room, nobody's going to know how to read you. If they can't read you, they can't trust you. And at any given moment, any man can be responsible for making a decision that's on behalf of the safety of other people, because we are not afforded the opportunity to make decisions from fear. Okay, that is just the bottom line. Like, no matter what type of man you want to talk about, and this is why I focus on what like my brand is, being accountable masculinity. Doesn't matter if you're alpha, a beta, or whatever other designation you want to call it. If you're not accountable, you're not effective. You're not useful. You know, and you become a liability. If you can't be personally accountable as a man, you you're a burden. And the worst thing you can do in life is be a burden to somebody else. If you have the ability to take care of self, you're personally accountable, and you can stand, you know, like if you could stand in the gap between somebody else's misunderstanding and conflict, that's the thing that make you a man. Those are things that make you a responsible man, because being responsible is not just about yourself. That's just you having a different type of situation awareness for your environment, to look after people that look after you, that thrive in your reciprocal energy just like you do theirs. You got to have people that you pour pour whose cup you pour into as well, so that way you can understand the benefits of having real loyalty, security, and not having to be concerned about things like problems being bigger than you, problems being bigger than your ability to solve them.
I like that. I also think that men are faced with certain problems because over time it's been shown that the majority of men are led to think in a physical nature. So that's why when things trip them up, even you see it on TV or you see it in history, a lot of powerful men were brought down by the opposite sex because they don't have that discipline to not be led with the smaller head. So I think we should always be trying to see how we can discipline ourselves to where our the physical doesn't outweigh the decision making of the mental. So always be strengthening your mental because it's easy to think, oh, I'm gonna get away with it. I can slip and slide over here and over there, and then next thing you know, you've cost yourself your family, you cost yourself your dignity, you cost yourself your position of authority because you couldn't discipline yourself, yet you're trying to tell people to be disciplined.
Yeah, I actually back that on that. You see, I would say that the only control you have over is your own environment, your own circle, right? I mean, if you come into my house, it's my rules. This is how it's going to be, right? So you would have to respect those rules, just like if I go into your house, right? It's not something I'm going to question. If you tell me take my shoes off, I'm not going to ask you, well, why? You have wood floors. I'm going to say, oh, okay, cool, you know? And I think people need to understand those are boundaries you set. Rather, it hurts the person's feeling, really don't care. You're coming over to see me, right? And I'm going over to see you. You have to respect the rules and the boundaries. Now, I never really grew up with riffraff because my father kept that out, even from my own immediate family, from cousins and all that, because he kept the riffraff away. The only ones that came to Canada to visit him was the ones that he approved. You couldn't just show up at his door because you're getting on the next plane. So, and I govern my life like that as well. And I think men need to do that. You need to set your boundaries and hold your ground, because it saves from confusion. It saves a lot of headache going back and forth, right? So if I know I'm set in my ways, I'm going to really communicate that with you, so you have no misunderstandings when you leave. And I think men need to do that. It's okay to have set rules. Can you bend them? Sure, but you choose to bend them. People don't bend them for you. You choose to bend them. Because if you know you're going to bend them and only hit them with them later, then it's wrong, right? So I think that's what men really, because you only have control about what you have, with what's your surrounding. If it's your family, you only have control over them. You don't have control over outside source. You can't control what others do. You can only protect your family, from what others do.
Challenges. What you got, Chris?
If we're talking about the challenges of being a responsible family man or a man in general,
correct.
I think one of them is understanding that sometimes a lot of the decisions that you make for the whole aren't going to please everybody. A lot of guys were never taught that.
But what's the challenge in that? Is the potential conflict between the person who may not agree with the decision?
Yeah. The potential conflict, the potential backlash, the potential I don't like this decision, so I don't like you type of conversation that's bound to happen. The villainization of you, if that's even a word. You understand what I'm saying? Just because you made a decision that was better for everybody, that one or two people in the family or one or two people in your circle didn't agree with, but it still wound up working out because it was the right thing to do. Sometimes we have to make decisions that piss people off. And we just got to deal. And that's a part of the game. That's a part of being responsible.
Go ahead, Coach.
So I think one of the challenges of being a responsible family man is recognizing that the challenge that I don't need or that I don't worry about are people. People never challenge a responsible family man, right? I'm gonna use a ship analogy. The captain of a ship isn't challenged by the crew members on the ship. The captain of the ship is only challenged with the environmental changes that prevent him or her from navigating to the destination. So the individuals on the boat don't challenge the captain. So first and foremost, family men need to recognize that the people within their household don't challenge a responsible family man. It's not a concern, it's not an issue. So at the end of the day, what responsible family men need to understand is that the only challenge that they have to worry about, ideally, and that is if they have already had, if they have a vision, they have priorities under that vision, and they stick to those priorities, the only thing that challenges that is the ebbs and flow of this thing that we call life. Keeping your family in a position to where they stay ahead of the bell curve. That's the challenge, not people, not the person that lives in my house, not my children, because at the end of the day, I'm a responsible family man. And I am very clear on my definition. If you don't feel, again, I'm sorry, if you don't feel like, I'm the family man to you, then the door works both ways. I think that's one of the things that we need to understand. This kind of goes back to the conversation we had before. Be very selective with who you choose to do life with. So people are never a challenge. If it is, you chose wrong. That's all it is. Family men, responsible family men, they position their family so that they can effectively navigate the storms of life.
I would say for me, a challenge has been at one time was just not knowing if you're doing a good job as a husband or as a father. I mean, you look to your left or something. And I know some of it come with the comparison thing, because you look to the left and I look and I see Coach and his wife, and they got 3 kids and all their kids make the honor roll, and you know what I'm saying? And these jokers, the star on the basketball and the football teams, and then I look at mine and I'm just like, man, these dudes barely passing the ABCs. Not saying, but I'm just saying that sometimes there's some comparison right there, and we're like, well, what is it that I don't have, or where do I get the information to whereas my kids or my family is as successful as Coaches or as Roland's? And I know it's not about looking at somebody like I mentioned before and comparing the two. However, we can use people sometimes as reference points when it comes to what we want to be. If I know Coach is a super successful coach and that's what I'm aspiring to do, then I may emulate some of the things he do. You know what I mean? I mean, like, well, how did Coach do X, Y, and Z? So as I can, um, be as successful as he may be in whatever profession he is. So I think for me, just one of the challenges was just early on was just not knowing what you don't know. And when you don't know what you don't know, you make mistakes. So that was in luckily as you get older, you start looking back and reflecting on some of those mistakes that you learn from them, and you move forward and do bigger and better and greater things. But for me, definitely one of those challenges was just not knowing nothing.
But you know what, Garfield, I'm going to say this. I'm talking about a family environment that I don't have, but I'm sure, you're married, you have kids and all that.
Mhm.
If you want to know if you're doing good as a husband, that's your wife's job to tell you and put you in check. That's her job to come up to you and say, honey, I love you as a man, but you're really falling, because nobody else can tell you that. Your mom can't tell you that. Outside sources can't tell you that. Coach can tell you if you're building it wrong. He can tell you if you're driving it wrong. But if you want to know if you're a good husband, if you're doing it right with the kids, that's where the wife steps in. That's where she takes the lead and tells you to your face, you know what? You're cutting it short. Or you know what? Boy, I am a lucky woman to be with you. That role is passed on.
When you choose right, that's what happens.
That's why I said within a healthy environment, a healthy relationship. I'm not talking girlfriend and all that external stuff. I'm talking in a committed, solid relationship. The house is being run good. You just want to know that's a bedroom talk at night before you put your head down between you and your wife, and she's going to tell you, and she should be comfortable enough to tell you, put you in check, because that's where her role steps in, period. Because no one else can tell you. And if you tell me an outside source, then you know what? Somebody else is minding your business. That's all I'm going to say.
Let's play this out then. So, Antoine, your wife says, Antoine, you're not cutting the mustard. A, B, C, and D. Do you take that at face value, or do you challenge what she says?
Well, I ask her, where am I not cutting it? She better have a not generally. I want specifics, right?
And what if she gives you, and she gives you the specifics, and you don't agree? She say, you know, you are not spending enough time with your kids. I know. She's like, let's say here's the scenario. You have a painting due.
Right.
You have a deadline, and I know you always make your deadlines.
Right.
For some sort of reason, you weren't able to make your deadline, and you was goofing off or whatever. I know that never happened to you, but now with that deadline, you have to. You may miss a football game and miss a football game, blah blah. You miss 3 football games, and your wife's like, "Look, your son said he don't want you to miss no more football games."
Right.
And she like, "You're not stepping up. You're having issues. You're having conflict with your son now. You're messing up the relationship because he's expecting you to be there, and you're not there because you're in the room painting." So
And
how do you handle that?
Okay, this is how I would handle it like this. I would say, honey, you know what? Really, I'm not missing it. I'm really missing that much. Yeah, this is how A, B, and C is feeling. You need to be there for this one. You know what? If you're saying it like that to me, okay, I got to make that phone call to the client. It's time. Because I really don't want to be that kind of father. And if you're really, I just want you to know, though, just be realistic, baby. I might have to take a cut on the paycheck for that one, right? That vacation, I'm going to lose money because every time I'm late, you know how I got to cut into it. If you're okay with that, I'm good, but I will be there because you're bringing it to my attention like that, and I don't want to be that dad. I got to make that phone call to the client. Let me just make that call to that person and see where I stand. But I can guarantee you, because you said it to me like that, and John was feeling that way, I'm gonna be there. I don't know what time, but I'm gonna be there before the ending. I tell you that now. That's how that conversation's gonna go because she's putting her foot down, right? And I love her, so I gotta back off on that one.
I think there's hope for Antoine. Antoine, we're gonna get you married up, man.
I would just
come on, man. I ain't that bad, man.
Ain't that good either.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I would.
You guys are my
good, Antoine.
No way, man. Hey, look at the chat. If I'm worthy, look at the chat. And tell me, I don't want to shrink. I don't have 2 screens like you.
Don't mess it up. You on the road, Antoine.
Yeah. What you got, Coach?
Yeah, I would just be
Rick is always honest with me.
So I would just be curious on where that metric of understanding came from.
Understanding of her saying he's a good husband and not.
Right.
See, now that's one thing that I agree with Antoine on, because, and it may just come from her expectations.
Right.
But the only he can't say he's a good husband at all, because he could be trash.
Well, no, I'm not saying that we don't have the conversation. But again, I'm having the conversation just so I can understand where that measure of expectation comes from. Don't compare me to your dad, because your dad ain't a good husband. He's just your dad. Your mom is the only person, based upon that understanding, that can give him some things to think about. But that doesn't mean that just because your mom brought it to his attention, that doesn't mean that he was failing. Maybe he was just not doing what she wanted him to do. So that's kind of like my point. So again, going back to the whole identity metric, right? The only person who can paint the picture for manhood for me is a man. The only person that can give me a model as a man is a man. So I'm not saying that we don't have the conversation, but where does your metric of understand of good versus bad come from? Remember the terms good and bad are measures of judgment.
No.
Yes, they are. Good and bad is judgment.
No.
So at the end of the day, if news is simply news, whether it's good news or bad news, that's a matter of your perception. So again, when we look at it from that perspective, again, I'm not saying that we won't have the conversation, but we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to go back to my source document of understanding, which is where, again, those priorities come from. Just because I'm not where you want me to be, exactly when you want me to be and how you want me to be there, does not necessarily require that I need to be there. Now, if you need me to be there, there's nothing wrong with asking me to be there. You see what I'm saying?
That's not what we're talking about, Coach. No, that's not. We're talking about you as a man doing what you need to do as a man. We're not talking about the act. We're talking about wait, hold on. We're talking about the good and bad of a.
Pause. You kind of interrupted me, so you wait. My point is, at the end of the day, I said in the beginning, my metric of manhood is not about doing. So again, if that's what you're trying to look at and say my metric of manhood is doing, I don't necessarily have to agree to that. That's why I made the statements leading up. It's a linear equation, right? That's why I said what I said. Identity is where it all starts from. If you have a faulty identity or you have a faulty identity of who I'm supposed to be, where does that identity come from?
No.
And then when it comes down to it, we have to have an understanding. That's why we have the conversation. Just because we're having a conversation doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do anything about it. I just need to understand your perspective of it. And maybe that conversation needs to go back and forth so we can clearly define what those parameters look like.
No, we were talking about being a good husband and who's going to tell you about being a good husband. Now, if you're a man and you're not productive, you ain't a good man. You ain't productive. You ain't doing nothing. And I'm going to call you out on that, because if you're in school and you don't study and you don't get good grades, you're not exactly an A student. So it's okay to say you're not a good man, right? Now, if I'm married to a woman, my mother is not with me as much as my wife. My mother can tell me my mannerisms, my character, what she saw growing up, my personality. She knows me deep as a person because she birthed me. She saw everything. So she knows when I'm sad. My mother can call me and say, "You're not feeling good today, huh?" And I'll be like, "God damn, woman, yes. How'd you know?" I just, you're my son, period. Now, your wife is something you join together with her. She is with you. We're talking about in a union of marriage that she knows what you do, work. She knows if you're paying the bills on time. She knows if you're taking care of her. She knows if you're paying. Oh, she's looking at you as the husband that she married. Now, we're not talking about the act of what you do, right? Because if you do something, if she's asking me, listen, this is what John is saying, how he feels about you not being there as a present parent. It's not about her telling me to do it. She's just letting me know I'm not fulfilling my need as a parent because I'm always missing something. Now, it's my job as the man to acknowledge what she sees that I failed to. And me failing to see that is me failing as a father because my son is feeling that. Now, how is she going to tell me? My mom can't tell me that. She don't know what my son's feeling. My brother, nobody, right? And my son can't really tell me because I probably shoo him away. So my wife is going to take the initiative and she's going to tell me. And that is her telling me I'm not being a good father at the time that I should be. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what was asked. So I'm saying it's up to her to tell you if you're being a good husband. You picked her, right? You said, well, you pick a good woman. Well, that's your choice. Well, what's determined that she's a good woman? You, because you picked her. So within the marriage, it's easier for her to say, you're not cutting it. Because she's with you. She sees what's going down. She sees you're always late. You're not picking her up on time. You're not doing what you're supposed to do as a provider, as a leader, as a man. So that's what we're talking about. Now, we're not talking about the act. We're talking about within the confines of a marriage. The interdependent stuff you guys like to talk about and all that stuff, that's where we're at. That's at least how I understood it.
We understand that part.
Yeah, that's how I understood it.
We got that.
Y'all were talking about the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's all.
Passive aggressive agreement. That's all I'm saying. Clip that. Clip it. Passive aggressive agreement. That's all I've been saying. Clip it.
It's just on the backside, what is done with that information, we would do it differently. That's all it was.
Okay.
Yeah. I like that though. It was good to see it like that close, because usually it happens with a different couple of other people going in between the conversations, but have it literally like stacked on top of each other was like, that was good. I liked it. Can we clip that? Hey man, we about to roll out of here, man. Appreciate everybody in the chat, man. You guys been on fire tonight. Liz, Reload, Sim, Shaking Nations with Jesus. Shell's in there today. Charlotte Ann or Charlotte Jordan. I don't know what happened to her. She made one comment and she probably ninja watching somewhere, So, but everybody who's been in there and made a comment, I'm can't possibly go through an hour and a half worth of chats to go back and name everybody name by name. But I really appreciate everything. But we're gonna end the show with the final thoughts. We're gonna go around the horn, give you our final thoughts about anything and everything when it comes to men responsibility and their families. So stand by. Look for a thick.
All right, so we're gonna close it out, and I got a screen I need to share. Hey, go ahead and hit that button that's backstage for. Here we go. So what we have here is my little entry for the reheated French fries, the 4 laws of accountable masculinity. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. Boom. All right. Accountable masculinity rule number 1, men focus on men. Establish personal accountability standards amongst reasonable men that intend to improve our society. Create solutions for the benefit of our society by only discussing tangible outcomes based on our skills. Rule number 2, we don't argue with women. Women have their own issues and so do men. As men, we can learn to mitigate our issues by observing the conflict management skills of women. By remaining in observation mode, men have the vantage point to avoid cyclic negative competitions and unhealthy conflicts with women. After implementing the findings from the observation into our philosophy, we should be better focused on ourselves. What's understood doesn't need to be said. Accountable men have code. Rule number 3, decentralized leadership requires knowing when to lead and when to follow. Must avoid misrepresenting fellow men. Although we are not perfect, we must have redeeming efforts. Accountable masculinity rule number 4, legacy and equity. Live a life of service towards your community and others. You must be credible and capable of both mentoring and being mentored. You must be receptive and coachable. Being able to instill knowledge and wisdom into others is an act of submission and a privilege. Men have code. That's my contribution for tonight's final thoughts.
My final thoughts. Well, I learned a lot tonight. I learned that we as men have a lot of responsibilities and we carry a lot of weight that nobody really talks about and nobody really puts thought into. And I understand that as a man, I have to be useful. So I guess my final thought would be learn how to be useful to your family as long as it doesn't hurt you in the process. That would be it. The rest of everything else I'm learning, which is why I did a lot of listening tonight and not a lot of talking. So yeah, that would be my final thought.
Hey, so real quick, going back to the beginning again, you have to have a clear definition and a clear identity of what manhood is before you go into being a responsible family man. Once you have a clear definition of what manhood is, you need to understand what a family man is all about, right? So again, look at those who went before you. Look at your father if your father's a good role model. Look at your grandfather. Look at uncles within your family dynamics. You see the things that they do. Have a good model to follow. If you don't have a good model to follow, there's nothing wrong with going on a journey to learn, learn what that looks like. Once you have a good understanding of that, then you actually understand that again, and I keep stressing this piece, that responsible men are not challenged by the people that's on their ship. The challenges that they will face will equate to navigating this thing called life and keeping the family ahead of the bell curve. So making sure that you're making decisions within the scope of your family based upon your priorities so that you can put your position put the family in the best possible position, as well as empowering people within your household.
I would say, as far as becoming a man and who you are as a man, I think learn the duties of a man. Right? Learn the duties of the man. It's right across the board, generally speaking, what a man's duty is, and become that man. Now, after that, discover who the man you want to be. Right? The man that you see yourself being in the future, present, whatever it is. Develop your entire personality, your skills, what it is you need to do to reinforce being a man. But the duties of a man is undisputed, right? So you already know that. Find out what they are, and then become that man, and then become the man you want to be. After that, it's communicating that to everybody on the outside, because you can only control what you do within your circle. But outside of that, you have to be willing to stand your ground and communicate that with everybody. It's okay to be selfish with your time. It's your time. It doesn't belong to anybody. Not everybody's not supposed to like you, nor do you want everybody to like you, right? Sometimes they need to feel you so they could listen to you. That's how I see it, right? Now, if you want it, you have to go for it and discover what you need in order to get it. But communicate that and be willing to be responsible for the outcome of your actions. Take full responsibility. Don't say it if you don't mean it, because you can't take it back. You said it, right? So take full responsibility of what comes out of your mouth. Back it up. And when you could back it up, now you're standing as a man on your word, your principles, your morals, your values. I was fortunate enough to have 2 parents in the household, the strictest dad possible. Do I wish he was softer in some areas? Absolutely. But I know the role of my mom, and I know the role my dad played. So it was easy for me to go to each one for what I needed. Find that in your own life. If you don't have a dad, find a mentor. Find somebody that can instill these things in you. Because there is a right way to do something, and you do come of an age to know what's right and what's wrong. If you have to decide in the middle, then you know you're confused, and ask somebody, right? And just remember one thing. Leadership is not ego, right? Leadership is knowing how to process what the information you get in order to designate that to everybody. All right, just that's a key thing right there. And I think people need to know that. Leadership is not ego.
You muted.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I got a PowerPoint presentation real quick. No, I'm just joking. I got to throw my little quibs in there. But first and foremost, men being responsible to their families. Always be seeking self-improvement and improvement for your family. And always, you got to have a listening ear and a listening heart for your family, because when you aren't listening and they're growing, you aren't necessarily doing your part, because you got to know and identify how they're growing and where they have needs also. And you have to make sure you're developing a family unit. These brothers, hey, they spoke eloquently and said everything that I was thinking when it concerns becoming a man and a man of family, because you're responsible. You have to be responsible, not just for yourself, but responsibility to your family, to your community. And when you can be responsible in front of your family and they can actually see it, you are developing them without even speaking, because they listen and they watch. So while they're listening and watching, and they can see how you move and how you handle people, how you deal with circumstances, that's why you see a lot of these little kids, they be going to school and they start cursing and things like that, because they watch their parents. So they think this is the way I respond. So note that they're watching you, and always seek self-improvement. Then you can start your journey as a productive family man. And the first part of that is being a man.
Amen. I love it. I enjoyed every single word of the show tonight. I really appreciate all you guys. To everybody who's watching, I appreciate it. So before you go, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. Thank you again to the Wolfpack members that were here tonight, and everybody who joined in today's special episode of Elevated Dialogue. Big shout out to the chat. You guys were on and popping tonight. I know I didn't get around to putting up everybody's comment with everything, but I really appreciate everything that was said, everything that was typed up. I did look at every single comment at some point during the show. It was a whole lot, so I didn't, like I said, I didn't have the opportunity to put all of them up. See you all next week, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for another great show. Next week, we're going to be talking about should a man compromise who he is for anyone or anything. So it's going to be a really good topic. Look forward to seeing everybody there. Gentlemen, again, appreciate you being here tonight again. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, we are out.